transphobic is how some people in Jacksonville describe a new rule impacting driver's licenses.
Now you can no longer change your gender on your Florida driver's license. So how will this impact people on the first?
As a synonym for sex, gender and sex are two different things, right? Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology.
And this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the scene in Florida, or at least is the scene for the past few days, seeing how it is that the state of Florida finally passed a law saying that you have to identify as your sex, of course, what you were born as, your biological sex on your driver's license. But of course, TYT, they obviously decided to come out and, let's just say, have a bit of a field day with this. Now, the other day I gave Anna Kasparian a W for her take on illegal immigration and crime and why it is that people need to be deported, even though I personally think that deporting a lot of these people that she was complaining about, the ones who attacked the NYPD officers, and of course those same people, by the way, would end up in Arizona where they officially got arrested and they're apparently being sent back. Very, very weird, strange thing going on here. But still at the same time, though, I had to give her a W for that. But I got to give TYT an L today. Now, 99% of the time, I would be here giving TYT an L, but at the same time, every now and again, a W will come out. Almost like that unintentional W that came out just now by Anna. Of course, gender is what's in your head, and of course, sex is exactly what you're born as. But of course, if I say that here on this platform, then guess what? This video just may, in fact, get demonetized. But still, at the same time, this is a very interesting story. So where do we start?
That will no longer allow transgendered people to change their sex, on their state driver's license to reflect their gender identity. On Friday, the deputy executive director of the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles wrote a memo that the department would rescind a provision on gender requirements in the driver's license operational manual. Now, Florida licenses can only be replaced when they're lost or stolen or when the licensee has their address changed or their name or some additional restrictions. But now it's unclear how this advisory will conflict with current federal and Florida law. Well, Florida Democrats have released a statement saying in part that the GOP continues to pursue blatant transphobic policies to serve their made-up culture wars. Erasing and criminalizing trans people is absolutely disgusting and cannot be allowed or stand for.
So, as you guys obviously just saw right there, the state of Florida, they're obviously demanding that you put your sex on your driver's license. And of course, there are civil penalties that may come as a result of not getting this entire situation fixed. Now, it's obviously got activists up in the air, and we'll get to that here in a second. And don't worry, we'll be getting to TYT here momentarily. But the thing you got to understand is this right here. There's this thing called consent. Okay, and consent is exactly where we're going to be going at for the purposes of this video. This is, once again, La La Land, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, absolute craziness. Think about it this way here. Let's just say that you are in a situation where you are, I don't know, possibly you're experiencing chest pains, okay? So what do? Maybe you're almost incapacitated. Maybe you don't get to the bottle of aspirin, but maybe you're able to call 911. Well, 911, they immediately trace the phone call. They show up to your residence, assuming that your front door is not unlocked. They go in. Of course, they would do this after law enforcement secured the scene. One of the main reasons why it is you don't want to defund your police departments, because guess what? Anytime an ambulance is called, police are notified as well because they got to make sure the scene is secure. Can't go into a crack house, can't go into an area where people could possibly get hurt or injured or possibly even killed. So therefore, that's got to happen. So the situation is this right here. You're lying on the floor, maybe you're dying, and of course you can't give consent. So that then becomes something called implied consent. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with sex? Well, it has a lot to do with sex because a lot of times, hospitals, especially if you've been treated at a hospital before, they will have your records on file saying, okay, he's been to this facility before. And in Florida, especially with the elderly, there are actually, and so if you're from Florida, please comment in the comment section. I would love to hear what you got to say on this. There are little ambulance centers or little emergency rooms that are actually located street to street. I'll explain that a little bit further after we look at the protesters, because obviously people want to protest over this, as you guys saw at the very, very beginning of the video. But obviously we got to highlight this because people are upset that they've got to actually put their biological sex on their driver's license. Take a look.
On your side, she's live in the newsroom with what we know so far about this. Renata?
Yeah, we're learning about this in a memo from the state's Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles to county tax collectors. In it, the department defines the word gender and says misrepresenting your gender on a driver's license can lead to criminal and civil penalties, including your license being revoked.
It feels like an absolutely targeted attack. I think that they'll take this as far as to criminalize people's existence.
Cindy Nobles, president of PFLAG in Jacksonville, which works with youth and advocates for the rights of people in the LGBTQ+ community, is reacting to the new rule for Florida's driver's licenses. The Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles deciding you are no longer able to change your gender on your license. First Coast News.
Now, really quick, after a minute and 17 seconds, I got to throw this out here. I can't help but think to myself that there's going to be a scenario someday where, let's just say a guy is identifying as a woman and they haven't exactly had the surgery, or maybe they haven't taken hormone blockers. Either way, though, their parts are obviously still there. That right there being the twig and berries, the Francona beans, and the great big giant or very, very small sausage, whatever the hell they're packing. I can't help but think to myself that there's going to be a scenario someday where there's an actual injury, which, by the way, that region of the body, there are some injuries that can be fatal in that area, especially if it's like, I don't know if it's like I'm just saying that I can just think of a scenario where something like that actually happens and a person's bleeding out. And of course, you look at the driver's license and your EMS and you say, well, the driver's license says F right here where it says sex, but yet obviously this guy's Francona beans were, right. I got to keep things clean because of the YouTube algorithm. You'll understand here in a second. But I can't help but think that maybe there's a scenario like that that's possibly going to happen. And maybe that is the reason why it is that the state of Florida has said, you know what? Maybe you should have your sex on your driver's license and not what you identify as. Let's keep going.
Asked the department why they're making this change. In a statement, they said, quote, in Florida, you do not get to play identity politics with your driver license. They declined to do an interview.
An arbitrary decision made by a very prejudicial state legislature that made it illegal to exist as many of our trans friends and family are existing.
Florida House Representative Dean Black supports the new rule. He's sponsoring legislation that would require the word sex be on state IDs rather than gender.
Let's say you're in a bad car accident. Sometimes looking at the driver's license is how they determine whether you're a biological male or female. And that can matter when they're trying to give emergency life-saving care to you.
Noble says tens of thousands of Floridians will be impacted by this change when it comes time to renew their licenses. There is confusion over whether this rule can be used retroactively, meaning that anyone whose license does not indicate their sex assigned at birth could face criminal penalties. Nobles believes it can, but advocates with Equality Florida tell me the rule cannot work retroactively. The Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles didn't answer that question when we asked. Renata DiGregorio, First.
Now, guys, I don't know about you, but when it comes to the topic of healthcare, I think I go to a doctor. I talk to a doctor about this. I mean, God knows we got these people out here who scream and holler for free healthcare, but they don't seem to realize that 90% of the things that, quite frankly, they may contract are things that they could fix with proper health and diet, things like that there. But still, at the same time, though, I can't help but think of these scenarios where the EMS workers, EMTs, and the doctors may need your actual sex and not exactly what you identify as. Let's say that you are a man who identifies as a woman, but yet you have prostate cancer. What if you're a man who identifies as a woman and you've got testicular cancer? What if you are a man who is identifying as a woman and let's say you have cancer of the groin? Just saying, or what if you're a woman who's identifying as a man and you've got cancer of the ovaries? Sometimes if you're knocked out, if you're unconscious and it's implied consent, doctors are probably going to need to look at your driver's license before they do any types of procedures on you. I just figure I would point that out there, but let's leave it to TYT to obviously, complicate the obvious.
A memo stating that transgender Floridians could in fact be punished by civil or criminal penalties if their identified gender does not match the one listed on their driver's license. Imagine thinking that this warrants any attention, any criminal penalties. It's insane. Now, this is what the Florida policy on the matter used to be prior to the memo. If a Floridian had a physician's certified letter stating that they were undergoing clinical treatment for gender transition, they could change their gender on their license. Well, that has been scrapped now. So the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, puts out this order, this memo, permitting an individual to alter his or her license to reflect an internal sense of gender role or identity, which is neither immutable nor objectively verifiable, undermines the purpose of an identification record and can frustrate the state's ability to enforce its laws.
Now, guys, I have not talked about laws for a reason. I've talked for the most part about EMS, fire, rescue, identifying somebody who may be knocked out. Of course, I'm just using that scenario. It may be a little bit hyperbolic, but still it does happen. The thing about the law is this right here. You need to be able to provide proper identification, or you need to be able to properly identify somebody, especially if you're a cop. I mean, there are people out there, like at one point in time, and I'll never forget this because it actually blew my mind when I was told this. I went to the Law Enforcement Academy here in the state that I live in back in 2014. Of course, I had to go back in 2015 because I had to come out during SCAT, which is the area where you actually do like holds, throws, things like that right there. It was an abscess tooth. It was going to take not only an extraction of the tooth, but you need at least 2 days. And I was like, you know what? That's a lot of time to make up. The course is paid for, so why not just go ahead and go through it again? And I went through it again. Of course, it was a nighttime course, but still, one of the things that was going on is that the city that I was doing the Law Enforcement Academy in, the people who were primarily running the Law Enforcement Academy were the local police department. Now, the police department, of which, by the way, in the town I live in, it's not a small town. It isn't a big town. I would say it's probably right around 150,000 people live here. About 300,000 altogether come in, commuting, university, all that type of stuff there. And what I found strange was that when we got to the criminal investigation portion of the class, because they do break things out like this, it come to find out that we actually had a ring of serial killers. Yes, we had a ring of quote-unquote serial killers. They killed like 5 or 6 people here, and it was a group of 3. And they used to walk around town dressed like women. Just, and of course, if I say, if I go ahead and call it what it really and truly is, of course, I'll get the yellow dollar sign. But still, at the same time, though, proper identification is obviously what's needed. I mean, the last thing you want to do is drive up on somebody and next thing you know, also at the same time get sued because you misgendered somebody because somebody was just too crazy to realize that they were born a man or they were born a woman, yet they identify with whatever the hell they want to identify with that day. Which is very, very interesting, especially given what Anna is about to say.
So, how so? But let me continue. So the deputy executive director of the agency, his name is Robert Kynock, also argued that the term gender is historically and commonly been understood as a synonym for sex. Gender and sex are 2 different things, right? Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology.
Anna, can you say that one more time, hon?
As a synonym for sex. Gender and sex are 2 different things, right? Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology.
Gender is in your head. Now, they love to tell us that gender is a social construct. They love to say that. But of course, this right here can go a multitude of ways. Now you guys know me, I'm the traditional conservative, and of course, I'm the guy who says ain't but 2 genders, which of course, there ain't but 2 sexes. I personally think that gender is just another form of...
Jeff Munson here. You like watching people get fucked for free? Watch me fuck Mark Kerr for free. I'm gonna fuck him. I'm gonna put these hands right around his ass and fuck his ass.
It's really funny because if I was to say exactly what I was about to say, I would have gotten demonetized or possibly it would have violated terms of service and YouTube would have removed the video like a year or so later because they've been doing that to a lot of content creators, especially smaller content creators. But still, at the same time, I'm allowed to say that there or put that in the video, listening to Jeff Munson talk about some... It's just the way the video was edited. I don't really know. It's very, very weird how it is that that's allowed on the platform, but me basically telling the truth about gender and sex, that right there is not allowed. Basically, what Anna is saying, which by the way is an unintentional W, is that it's really and truly in your head, meaning that it's probably a mental disorder. So in a lot of ways, what the state of Florida is doing is the state of Florida is trying to cut down on cases where those who may be mentally ill may be screwing up the system any further. Now, you're going to hear Cenk right here in a second argue that this right here is conservatives and Republicans loving big government. But it's something very weird that needs to be said. I mean, well, it's actually not weird, but it's truthful. But it's very weird the way their ideology works. Because if you actually read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, you'll find out that, of course, those on the left, liberals, don't understand moderates and conservatives, but moderates and conservatives actually understand liberals, and they understand the framework and where it is they're coming from, like how they feel. But there is actually an overlap, believe it or not, between progressives, liberals, and libertarians. But for whatever reason, they think that there's more overlap between libertarians and conservatives, which isn't exactly true, as I'll explain after this bit here.
Let me tell you why this is so scary. So first of all, you've got the Republicans in Florida saying big government is awesome and it should tell you who you are. It should tell you what to feel. It should tell you what gender you are. And big government doesn't care what you think or your stupid freedom. These are right-wingers. They love to talk about freedom, but the minute anyone doesn't agree with them, they want to take their freedom away.
Yes, Cenk, they are arresting you for who you are. You know, guys, it's always hilarious to me to see somebody say, I need a good man, but yet that person is actually a guy identifying as a woman. And I just simply want to look at them and say, then just look inward. If you're looking for a good man, just look inward, because obviously there's a man there. That right there is what the hell is there. You're not a girl, you're not a woman, you're a man. You got man parts. I mean, you may be going through the hormone blocker stage, but for the most part, you're still a man. I mean, you know how they do it is they have this tuck thing that goes in it, actually tucks it. I mean, Blair White knows how to do this. I still call him Bob from time to time, but still at the same time, though, I don't want to violate YouTube's terms of services. But let's get back to Anna real quick.
So, how so? But let me continue. So the deputy executive director of the agency, his name is Robert Kynock, also argued that the term gender is historically and commonly been understood as a synonym for sex. Gender and sex are two different things, right? Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology. And according to him, that made up reason is why Floridians shouldn't be able to list a gender on their license that does not match their biological sex. But the memo even gets worse. Misrepresenting one's gender understood as sex on a driver's license or driver license constitutes fraud and subjects an offender to criminal and civil penalties, including cancellation, suspension, or revocation of his or her driver's license. And the insane policy raises several questions which have thus far not been answered at all.
Well, Anna, the thing is this right here, hon. The thing is, simply put, you need to be identifying with what you are. You don't need to be identifying as whatever's in your head. You know, if you're born as a guy, you have certain parts, obviously. And of course, if you are a woman, you lack certain parts or you have different parts. Like I said, try not to violate terms of service here. It's pretty simple. It's not just for healthcare, for legal reasons, but obviously because they want to keep the state of Florida quite efficient. I mean, they've gotten more and more efficient, especially when it comes to hurricanes and stuff like that there. You know, North Carolina, we're still a little bit behind on that, even though we still get hit from time to time with hurricanes. It's really, really funny, too, because Florida, we call it the dong handle, and yet North Carolina, we kind of call the ass because of the way things look. But still, at the same time, though, you would need to identify with what you are, not what you think you are or whatever form of queer you think you are that day. Oh God, I just violated YouTube's terms of services. But still, though, at the same time, though, that's the reason why Florida is doing this. It makes things a lot simpler. It's obviously common sense, which is something that these people don't really have. But that's why Florida is doing this. Now, I know some people are going to be a little bit confused in the comment section. Quite frankly, I don't care. The thing is this right here. If you are a man, then you need to have man on your driver's license as like your biological sex. If you are a man, but yet you have female, as I said before, if you have an injury down there that requires health care to save your life, it could slow up the process. Now, granted, most EMS and doctors are just going to do it anyways, as in like they're just going to patch you up regardless and try to fix that area because implied consent, you were out, you cannot consent to it, which I think would be absolutely very strange if somebody, if somebody, let's just say, decided, you know, this entire thing is confusing as hell, but still at the same time though, it would be obviously a crime if, say, you lost your parts, you started to bleed out, and because you identified as a female when you were actually a male, you died. This could also open the state up to a lot of lawsuits. It could also, at the exact same time, I don't know, maybe open up the medical facility up for lawsuits. I mean, you've got hospitals in the country right now that turn you away because you did not get the jab. You got hospitals that turn you away and say that, look, we have to treat them based upon what they identify as, but still at the same time, while doing that they're getting inadequate health care in the process. This is going to lead to a morass of all kinds of problems. And this right here is exactly the reason why the state of Florida is doing what they're doing, saying, look, you were born a guy. You need to put that down on your driver's license as a guy. No need for you to go get into the driver's license and say that you're a female, because that right there would just be fraud. Last I checked, fraud was punishable in every state, all 50 states. It was punishable. I mean, you could even get punished for fraud on the federal level. I just figured I'd point that out there. How about the Cenk?
Problem, okay? But the second problem is much bigger. So if at some point a cop pulls over a person who's trans and they decide that they have the wrong gender on their driver's license, they can arrest them for fraud. Fraud is a felony. They can get up to 5 years in prison. Are they gonna start pulling trans people over and start arresting them and putting them in prison in Florida? What kind of country are we now? What lunacy is this? Every trans person arrested on this would be a political prisoner, and by the way, also a religious prisoner. This is the Taliban. It just flat out American Taliban.
That's literally hilarious coming from a guy who openly supports the Palestinians and Hamas, who openly says that the Armenian genocide didn't occur. I mean, that's just kind of rich coming from Cenk, but let's listen to a little more.
Putting people in jail for 5 years because you think you don't agree with what's in their minds and how they want to live their lives and who they are. You're basically putting them in prison for who they are. And yes, that is fascism. So look, Florida is in a lot of ways a beautiful state, and I lived there for a while and I loved it. That was a long time ago. But now they've ruined it. Now, how can any trans person live there? All right, go ahead, Ann.
So at the end of the day, Cenk is arguing that conservatives like big government. No, that's not the case at all. I mean, last I checked, liberals are demanding free health care. Liberals are demanding free this, free that. They're demanding that the taxpayer pay for abortions for individuals who don't identify with their biological sex. Oh yeah, that's right. All the other stuff that's going on out there. Yeah, the Biden administration at one point in time, they were actually handing out free crackpot kits. So you guys can look. Well, I've got it right here, but I'll let you guys look at it in the description box as well. The thing is this right here, him saying that conservatives like big government is basically what he's trying to imply with this entire thing. That's not exactly true. Now, what we would like is, how do I say this? We would like an efficient government. We would obviously like certain things not be around our kids. You see, one of the biggest problems that liberals have is that they typically don't have kids. They typically don't have children. Last I checked, Cenk didn't have any. Last I checked, Anna didn't have any. I know I had somebody in my comment section recently come in here and say that Anna is very, very attractive and he would love to take her on a date. He would just avoid politics. And my response to that was two things. Number one, you do need to have a little bit of friction when you do go on a date with a chick, because you do need to be able to contrast one another. That's kind of like how you create conversation to get laid, guys. And you have to also understand that you're just a piece of steel you have to get past because you do get a nose job. But still, though, getting back on topic, the thing is this right here, what we prefer is an efficient government, not a big government, but an efficient government, a government that has common sense. Like, for example, we have to provide adequate health care. We have to also keep people from defrauding the system. So therefore, we need you to identify with what the hell you were born as. You were born a man, so therefore you are a man. You were born a woman, so therefore you were born a woman. You're not born anything else, okay? Everything else is, as Anna Kasparian said earlier.
Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology.
In your head. Now, you can go out there and try to free your mind or whatever, and we would all appreciate it if you did that. But still, at the same time, it's kind of like what Anna Kasparian just said.
Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology.
It's in your head. Sex is what you're born as. Gender is whatever the hell's in your head at the time. And we can't be having this craziness going on out there. So, of course, I mean, like I said before, of course, you can't be having people out there defrauding the system. That's just what the hell this entire situation boils down to. So while I wanted to give Anna an L, I have to give her somewhat of an unintentional W here. But still, though, this whole thing about big government and small government and arresting people, well, you know, you kind of arrest people for defrauding the system, Cenk. That's kind of what you do. You kind of arrest people for breaking the law. There are some states out there who, by the way, I hate their laws, but of course the laws are on the books. It's just the way that it is. Like, okay, New York State, for example, there's actually a law that states that you can be arrested as a gun salesman if you allow somebody to touch a weapon without an actual permit. There's all kinds of crazy laws out there. I mean, but still, though, at the same time, it's the law of the land, it's the law of the state. This is where it goes back to states' rights. This is actually small government. It's not big government. It's actually small government because the states are being allowed to do this. I mean, I'm in favor of what Florida did. Yay, DeSantis. He's back on my good side now. But still, at the same time, though, Cenk, this is not big government at all. I mean, I don't see Florida handing out free health care or whatnot. And really quick, I know somebody's going to come in here and talk about the book burnings. There's not been any books being burned in Florida. The only thing that DeSantis did was ban some books like Genderqueer and This Boy is Blue and sexually explicit content that was being shown to children. At first, he only banned it from the 3rd grade down. I actually thought he should have gone a lot further. My home state of North Carolina, we finally got those books out of our library. So yes, to a certain degree, we are in favor of some form of censorship, even though we're free speech absolutists. But the thing is this right here. That situation there, that right there was not free speech. That right there was liberals openly passing an agenda on our children. And that right there is another reason why it is that people are passing laws that are common sense laws, simply saying that you will put on your driver's license exactly what it is that you were born as, not as what Anna said.
Gender is in your mind, sex is your biology.
Whatever the hell is in your head at the time. Guys, please leave your comments in the comment section. Please tell me what it is that you think. Please give me your thoughts. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video. It looks like it's probably going to be the only video that comes out on Saturday. Of course, there is the case of Michael Rappaport. He went on the Patrick Bet-David podcast and basically went out of his way to tell people he was done with the left. Don't worry, we'll get to that tomorrow or on Sunday, either one. Still, though, please make sure you guys, please hit the like button, subscribe. Please leave your comments in the comment section. Also, one more thing, too. 2 sexes, of course, and gender is whatever.
Gender is in your mind. Sex is your biology.
Is in your head. With that right there being said, to all the SJWs out there, piss off.